Well, good morning. It's Monday, March 7th, 2022. I'm here in North Texas, where it's actually fairly brisk today, about mid-30s, I'm guessing. Very breezy. Once again, I know we'll be complaining about heat here before long. I am the host of the Earl Smith Show, and I didn't really intend to do the program starting in this fashion. I have an introduction I'm going to try and get loaded up later this week, but there's some things that came to my attention in the news that I think are worth sharing with you. Two primary issues. One is important, the other is important and actually very crucial in terms of the timing. So I'd like to share those things with you. Let's start with a little bit lower key, but a really interesting article in the Wall Street Journal written by Jason Riley. Jason Riley's a great writer, longtime contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and I really enjoy reading his columns, and he's talking about the issue of discrimination. And I think what he's doing very clearly here is showing that discrimination in any form is still discrimination. Discrimination in the dictionary does not define color or ethnicity or anything else. It just talks about the issue of prejudice. The particular article, and this is from a few days ago, it's from Wednesday, March 2nd, and the article is entitled, Asian Americans Fight Back Against School Discrimination. And in a nutshell, they're talking about that from schools as prominent as Harvard to a Virginia high school, courts are looking at the issue of racial discrimination and its harm to minority populations. And in this case, frankly, it's the Asian American community. While there's been this effort to have racial balancing in schools, because, speaking frankly, the Asian American community traditionally has a very, very high value on education. And I can remember the community I came from, there was a Honda manufacturing plant, and they would literally send their kids, their Japanese kids, to a second school in addition to their American school, because they felt in many ways the American school system was not really as thorough as it should be. And I think the fact that we're routinely dropping in our competition scores with other nations, which is a horrible indicator of where we're going. But long story short, because Asian American students do so incredibly well in admissions, the schools are, frankly, deliberately, blatantly discriminating against them in their efforts to have other minorities better represented. And I'm not arguing the fact that it's important to have diversity in the school system, but I think if you discriminate against one to benefit another, it is discrimination, and it is counterintuitive to what we're trying to do as a nation. So that article caught my attention. I wanted to share it with you. The other thing that is not only important, but I think far more crucial on a timing standpoint, is an article by Henry L. Miller, also in the Wall Street Journal, a great source of diverse perspectives. This is from Friday, March 4th, and the article by Henry L. Miller, who is a physician, a molecular biologist, and a senior fellow at the Pacific Research Institute, he writes about Biden's half-baked COVID treatment plan. Now, of course, anytime we start talking about COVID, it just lights 1,000 fires, and they seem to blow in every direction. And there's been a lot of bad information from all sides. I've, for a long time, have felt the inconsistencies in the message from the national medical community, if you will, the folks that work for the government. The fact that every week it seemed that the directions were changed was devastating when you're trying to earn, number one, public support for taking steps to be healthier, and left us all sitting at home. In fact, I just heard from the national news last night that less than half of the United States population trusts guidance by the CDC, which was always the hallmark for quality information on medical concerns. But importantly for us, one of the things that Biden's talking about is test to treat initiative. And basically, they want to be able to have you tested at your neighborhood pharmacy, which that makes sense. And if you're positive, to receive antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. Now, on the surface, that looks fantastic. But here's the other side of that coin. And as Mr. Miller says, it's a bad idea, and frankly, the president's medical advisors should have pushed him in a different direction, but they didn't. The Pfizer pill, which is called Paxlovid, is actually two pills in one. It's I'm going to spell it because, frankly, I have no clue about the pronunciation. It's nirmatrelvir. It is Nirmatrelvir, and ritonavir, Ritonavir. The former is the actual antiviral medication, and it's an enzyme that degrades. Let me back that up. I apologize. The former is the actual antiviral agent. The second component is an enzyme that degrades the first, interestingly, thereby increasing the concentration of the first medication in the bloodstream. The problem is, as is stated here, is that it can in fact cause complications when combined with a huge quote-unquote number of commonly prescribed drugs, especially in the patient population most in need of COVID-19 treatment. And frankly, based on my age and the fact that I've been a cardiac patient for many years, I'm one of the people they're talking about. It is being made available on emergency use authorization for COVID-positive adults who are, quote-unquote, at high risk for progression to severe COVID-19, including hospitalization or death, end of quote. The issue is that it also interacts with things, for instance, that I've been on in the past or am on currently, blood thinners, drugs that prevent cardiac arrhythmia, seizures, and psychotic behaviors. So let's think about that just for a second. This is that classic example, is the cure worse than the illness? Well, certainly we know COVID can be deadly, and folks in the older adult range or that have other health issues are absolutely at greater risk. But the problem is, in the process, you are actually increasing the risk for the medications that we routinely take with no side effects and that can be crucial for our well-being and our health. So, I'm not going to take, and I'm not anti-vaxxer, I'm not anti-medication, but I'm absolutely not going to jump on a new medication from the federal government that so clearly is, and by the way, it is very well documented, the problems. If you read the article in its entirety and do a little research, the problems are real. It's not imagined. It's not the right screaming, oh my gosh, it's another story from the government. It is an absolute factual concern for those of us that are on important medications for our lives. So something to look at. But I also want to share an update in Ukraine. I am beyond angry, beyond concerned in regard to the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. I don't have any family in Ukraine. I don't know that I even know anyone from the Ukraine. However, under the insane leadership of Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer, by definition someone who is a killer, and if you were someone who is an enemy in Russia, you may have very well paid the price by being killed. Invading Ukraine is a dangerous thing to all of us. If you think it is merely a Ukrainian issue, that's a mistake, because Mr. Putin wants nothing more than to restore the old Soviet Union. He wants to bring the now independent states, and Ukraine is a wonderful example of how far things have come. And this is a country that was attacked and millions died under Lenin, later under Hitler, and somehow they survived as a nation and as a people and have grown. They are very westernized. If you look at street clips prior to the invasion by Russia, you're seeing a country that, while we may not know the language, we completely recognize the environment. Very positive. Coffee shops, all the things, the things in life that we enjoy as freedom-loving Americans, Ukraine has loved and enjoyed. It's a democracy in many ways similar to our own. And Putin is a dangerous monster. I think he's a coward. He hides in his $1 million home, wherever the hell it is in Russia. And while his own people, Russians, are protesting in the streets about the war. And while Ukrainians, civilians, are being targeted and murdered, the world, while it has shown, let me break this into two different parts. We have the governments of the world, which are frankly still a little reticent because of the concern. You know, Russia is clearly a nuclear state, and I get that. But in the all too close history, the nations of the world stood by while Hitler grew to the point where they finally were forced to do something. And my concern is, are we going to do the exact same thing with Putin? I read a news story that we are going to be sending American jets to Poland, if I understood correctly, which will send their East Bloc jets to the Ukrainians who know how to fly them. There's no training curve. They know how to fly the Russian-built jet fighters that are in Poland, so they can employ them immediately. And as we have seen, to some degree, they've been pretty effective when they're on equal ground, and I certainly hope that the jets would provide that. And we're not leaving Poland out because we're going to provide them American fighter jets that, of course, you know, the capabilities of our aircraft are amazing. And more arms are coming, you know, TOW missiles, some of the surface-to-air missiles that can be bringing down Russian jets and or choppers. We're doing it, in my opinion, and again, I will admit I don't have firsthand knowledge, but I hear the president of Ukraine in an impassioned plea for more weapons, more support. We need to be doing that now. Sending this crap to Ukraine after the battles are over and the Russians are there is too damn late. It's got to happen immediately. So I'm hoping that's the case. And I certainly keep Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in my prayers. I hope Putin falls over. Mitch McConnell was right. The Russian people need to rise up and destroy him. You know, that's, people go, oh, that's horrible. It's not horrible. It's an absolute fact. He is a danger to the rest of the world. The fact that his friends, if you will, in the arena of nations is Red China, is North Korea, is Iran, should tell us everything we need to know. Enough of that. I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to listen. Please like and share if you don't mind. And a little later this week, I'll have my actual introduction to the program. We'll talk a little bit about what I'm hoping to be able to do. And with that, I'm going to bid you a wonderful week. Thank you.